I remember the exact moment my life split into before and after. My name's Chloe. I was sitting at our kitchen island, the marble cold under my elbows, venting to my sister Maya. Outside, rain blurred the city lights into watery streaks. If I met Ben today, I hissed, swirling cheap wine in my glass, I'd swipe left so fast, his profile would spin. Maya choked on her drink. Chloe, Jesus, she whispered, eyes darting toward the living room. But the bitterness had been simmering for months. He's just stagnant, I continued, voice rising despite myself. Comfortable. Like an old couch you keep because it's there, not because you love it. I listed his flaws like groceries, the receding hairline he pretended not to notice, the way he'd traded gym sessions for endless scrolling, how conversations now felt like pulling teeth. He stopped trying, I finished, the words sharp and final. A floorboard groaned behind me. I turned. Ben stood in the doorway, a half-eaten apple in his hand. His face wasn't angry. It was blank. Hollow. Like I'd erased him. He set the apple down on the hall table, carefully, silently. Grabbed his worn leather jacket from the hook. Walked out. The front door clicked shut, softer than a sigh. Maya stared at me, her mouth a perfect O. I forced a laugh. He's being dramatic. He'll cool off at the pub and come home. But my hands trembled, splashing wine onto the pristine marble. The silence after felt thicker than fog. Midnight came. Then 2 a.m. The bed felt vast and cold on his side. I texted, "Where are you?" Radio silence. By dawn, fury had replaced panic. How dare he? This silent treatment was manipulative, childish. I called. 6 times. Straight to voicemail. My message was pure ice, stop sulking. We need to talk. Come home. I called his mother, Janet, trying to sound casual. Oh, darling, she'd said, worry tightening her voice, he hasn't called me. Is everything all right? That's when the first real thread of fear pulled tight in my chest. What if he'd driven angry? What if he was hurt in a ditch somewhere? But another, uglier thought whispered, what if he's not coming back? I checked his closet. All his suits, shoes, even his ridiculous college sweatshirt, still there. Only his favorite gray hoodie was missing. I drove past his office. His parking spot gaped, empty. Back home, the silence pressed in. It wasn't just quiet. It was the absence of him. The missing sound of his off-key humming in the shower. The lack of his coffee mug left half full on the counter. The empty space where he'd usually leave yesterday's crossword, half completed. I missed the mundane soundtrack of my life, and that realization made me furious. At him. At myself. Day 3 bled into a gray, drizzly afternoon. Desperation tasted metallic on my tongue. I did the unthinkable. I logged into our shared banking app, my fingers clumsy on the screen. Scrolling through recent transactions felt like digging through his private thoughts. Groceries. Gas. Then, there it was. A charge from the Harbor Inn, $197. Yesterday. Relief washed over me, cold and sickening. So he was holed up in some budget hotel, playing the wounded martyr. I dialed the number, my knuckles white. Connect me to room 312, I demanded when the clerk answered. I'm sorry, ma'am, came the polite, robotic reply. We cannot connect calls without guest authorization. He's my husband. I snapped. I just need to talk to him. I understand, ma'am, she said, utterly unmoved. Policy prohibits it. I slammed the phone down. The screen cracked, a spiderweb spreading from the impact. Fueled by rage and humiliation, I texted Ben, really? The Harbor Inn? Stop acting like a petulant child and come home. Now. I watched the screen. 3 pulsing dots appeared, lingered, then vanished. He'd seen it. And chosen silence. The rejection was a physical blow. Rain lashed against the windshield as I drove to the harbor inn. It looked bleak, a squat building by the highway. I marched in, dripping onto the cheap lobby carpet. "My husband is in room 312, I announced to the young woman behind the desk, trying to project authority I didn't feel. "Ben Carter. I need his key. Now." She eyed my smudged mascara, my rain-plastered hair. "He checked out this morning, ma'am," she said, her voice carefully neutral. Disbelief choked me. "You're lying. Let me see the register." She didn't flinch. "He checked out around 10 a.m. "Describe him," I challenged, my voice trembling. "Tall? Dark hair, kinda messy? A small scar above his left eyebrow?" She nodded. "That sounds right." The confirmation was worse than denial. "Did he leave a message? For Chloe?" I hated the hope that leaked into my voice. She shook her head slowly, pity flickering in her eyes. "He didn't mention anyone, ma'am." Anyone. The word was a knife. I wasn't his wife in that moment. I was anyone. I stumbled back to my car, the rain mingling with hot tears I couldn't hold back. This wasn't sadness. It was the terrifying realization that I'd lost control of the narrative, of him, of us. The game I thought we were playing had real stakes, and I was losing. He walked back in on the evening of day 4. I was burning toast, the acrid smell filling the kitchen, a fitting backdrop. The key turned in the lock. My heart hammered against my ribs. He stepped inside, shedding the dampness. He looked different. Not just tired. Sharper. He'd shaved closely, trimmed his hair. He wore a simple navy shirt I'd never seen, untucked over dark jeans. It was subtle, but it screamed effort. "We need to talk," he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Dangerously calm. Like the still surface of deep, freezing water. "You need to talk?" I scoffed, turning off the smoking toaster, arms crossed like armor. "You disappear for days, ignore me, and you need to talk?" He walked past me to the small dining table, pulling out a chair but not sitting. Just resting his hands on its back. "I heard you, Chloe," he stated, his eyes locking onto mine. "Every word you said to Maya." I opened my mouth, ready to deflect, but he continued, his voice low and steady. "You called marrying me your biggest regret. You itemized my flaws like a shopping list. You said you'd choose differently now." I lifted my chin. "People vent, Ben. It's normal. You've never been perfect either." "Venting," he repeated, the word hanging heavy. "Is that what you call assassinating my character? Dismantling 10 years? Then he said it, the words landing with quiet devastation. I realized something, sitting in that hotel room. "You're not cruel, Chloe. You're just incapable of loving someone unless they're exactly what you want them to be in that exact moment." Rage, white-hot and defensive, surged. "How dare you?" I yelled, grabbing the charred toast and hurling it at the wall. It left a greasy smear. "Get out." A week later, he returned. Not to stay. To boxes. Cardboard cubes materialized in the hallway. He moved methodically through his study, packing books. I stood in the doorway, blocking his path. "Running away doesn't solve anything, Ben," I declared, trying to sound strong, in control. He didn't look up, carefully placing a worn hardback into a box. "There's nothing left here to solve, Chloe." The finality in his voice was terrifying. I was wrong. I blurted, the admission tearing out of me. "Okay?" I was angry, frustrated. "I didn't mean it like that. We can fix this. Counseling. Therapy. Whatever you want. I'll change." He paused, finally meeting my gaze. There was no anger, just profound weariness. You've said that after every blow-up for the last 5 years, Chloe. I'll change. I'll do better. He picked up another book. This time is different, I pleaded, stepping closer, my voice cracking. Because I finally believe you, he said quietly, stacking the book neatly. I believe you'll always be this person. The person who needs a target. He pulled a crisp business card from his pocket and held it out. This is my lawyer's contact information. I stared at the card like it was poison. You'd throw away 10 years? Over one stupid conversation? He hefted the box of books. No, he corrected, his voice firm but not unkind. Over 10 years of you keeping score. Of me never quite measuring up, no matter how hard I tried. He walked past me, down the hall, the cardboard box a physical barrier. I didn't follow. I stood frozen, listening to the trunk of his car slam shut, the engine start, the sound fading down the street until only the crushing silence remained. Something inside me broke clean through. The weeks after were a blur of empty rooms and echoing footsteps. I threw myself into work, went out with friends, painted the bedroom a defiantly bright yellow. Nothing filled the void. The house wasn't just quiet, it was haunted by the ghost of him. The ghost of us. 3 weeks in, I saw him. Whole Foods, of all places. He was at the seafood counter, talking to the guy behind the glass. And he was, laughing. A real, deep laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I ducked behind a towering display of organic avocados, my heart pounding. He looked different. Not just the new clothes. He stood taller, shoulders back. He'd clearly lost some weight. His skin looked clearer. There was a lightness about him, an energy I hadn't seen in years. He pointed at a piece of salmon, discussing it seriously with the fishmonger. He never used to cook salmon. He used to microwave frozen lasagna when I worked late. Now he was learning? I watched, mesmerized and sickened, as he paid. He turned, his cart bumping mine slightly. His eyes met mine. Recognition, then, nothing. No warmth. No anger. Just a flat, neutral acknowledgement. Chloe, he nodded, the name sounding like a stranger's. You look good, I stammered, the words tasting like ash. Thanks, he replied, the tone you'd use with a checkout clerk. He pushed his cart past me, didn't look back. I stood there, clutching a ridiculously overpriced avocado, feeling smaller and more insignificant than I ever had. The avocado felt like lead in my hand. He was moving on. Glowing, even. And I was just, stuck. I couldn't stand it. The silence. The image of him laughing. I texted him, pouring out a rambling plea. Please. One last conversation. Foreclosure. The old diner? He agreed. A small victory that felt hollow. I spent hours getting ready. Wore the blue dress he always loved. Rehearsed apologies, explanations, promises in the mirror. He arrived 5 minutes late, dressed not for nostalgia, but for a run, tech fabric, trainers. He smelled like fresh air and rain. He slid into the booth opposite me. I miss you, I launched in, the rehearsed words tumbling out too fast. He met my gaze steadily. I don't miss you, Chloe, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I miss who I thought you were. Who I hoped you could be. The honesty was brutal. Please, I whispered, reaching across the Formica table to touch his hand. Just, try again? We can fix it. He gently pulled his hand away. Remember our 3rd anniversary? He asked, his gaze drifting to the rain-streaked window. We were at that fancy restaurant. You had champagne. You said marriage was like buying art. That you either cherish it forever, hanging it where everyone can see, or you sell it off when it stops exciting you, when it just becomes background noise. My breath hitched. Ben, that was a joke. Dark humor. He looked back at me, his eyes holding a deep, unsettling sadness. Truth hides in jokes, Chloe. You meant it. He took a slow sip of water. There's something else, he said, setting the glass down carefully. I'm seeing someone. The world tilted. The diner noise faded to a dull roar. It's new, he continued, his voice measured. But she's kind. Patient. She doesn't keep score. He paused, then delivered the final, gentle evisceration. She sees me. Not just the parts she wants to fix. Not like you. The unspoken words hung in the greasy air between us. Last Tuesday, I saw them. Riverside Park. Spring was finally fighting its way through the lingering chill. I was walking, trying to clear my head, when I spotted them near the duck pond. Ben. And her. She wasn't a supermodel. Pretty, in an earthy, unpolished way. Wavy brown hair escaping a messy braid, practical hiking boots, no makeup. She was holding a brown paper bag. They were laughing, really laughing, as she tore off chunks of bread and threw them to the eager ducks. He watched her, a soft smile on his face I hadn't seen in years. Then it happened. She stepped back onto a patch of mud, her boot slipping. Ben's arm shot out instantly, steadying her elbow. She clutched his arm, laughing harder, leaning into him. He didn't let go immediately. They stood like that for a moment, connected, smiling at each other like they'd just shared the world's funniest secret. I ducked behind a sprawling oak tree, my back pressed against the rough bark, breath coming in shallow gasps. I watched them through the budding branches. The ease between them. The lack of tension. The way he looked at her, not with the wary exhaustion he'd often shown me, but with open affection. Simple. Uncomplicated. They walked away, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. I slid down the trunk, sitting on the damp grass, hidden. The truth, the uncomfortable, gut-wrenching truth I'd been fighting, slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just that I'd driven him away with my words. It was that my constant criticism, my dissatisfaction, my need for him to be more, had been a cage. By voicing my cruelest thoughts, I hadn't destroyed him. I'd set him free. Free to find someone who didn't see him as a project, but as a person. Whole. Enough. The pain that ripped through me wasn't just loss. It was the horrifying, shameful realization I was the villain in my own story. The house is too quiet now. Permanently quiet. The divorce papers arrived yesterday. They sit unopened on the kitchen island, a cold, legal monument to my failure. I don't cry anymore. Not like I did. Now, there's just this hollow ache. A constant awareness of the space he left behind. I replay that kitchen conversation with Maya endlessly. The flippant cruelty. The way I listed his flaws like they were sins. I thought I was just venting. Being honest. But the uncomfortable truth? I was punishing him. Punishing him for getting comfortable, for trusting me enough to be vulnerable, for not staying perpetually perfect, perpetually exciting. For daring to be human. I told myself my high standards were a virtue. That I deserved more. But the more I chased was a phantom. It was my own dissatisfaction, my own inability to find peace, projected onto him. Ben wasn't lazy. He was steady. He wasn't uninspired, he found joy in simple things, his books, a good meal, a quiet evening. Things I'd dismissed as boring. He wasn't stagnant, he was content. And I mistook his contentment for complacency. His loyalty for weakness. The hardest pill to swallow? Seeing him now. Seeing him happy. Thriving. It's proof. Proof that the problem wasn't him. It was the toxicity I brought. My need to pick, to criticize, to always find fault. I thought I was the prize. Turns out, I was the anchor, dragging him down into my sea of perpetual discontent. He didn't leave because he overheard one conversation. He left because that conversation was the final, undeniable confirmation of a truth he'd been fighting for years: he would never be enough for me. Because I didn't know how to let anyone be enough. Not even myself. So I sit in this beautiful, empty house I insisted we buy, surrounded by things I thought would make me happy, and I finally understand the cost of my selfishness. I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the best part of myself. And Ben? He didn't just walk away. He walked towards the light. The light I was too blind, too selfish, to ever see.